The din of the street made it hard for Carth to follow the sounds of her mother's footsteps. Normally, they made a sharp snap with each step of her heels along the cobbles, but today, the sound was muted. Carth scurried forward, trying to catch up to her mother, but only managed to grab onto the hem of her mother's dark green dress that blended in with the others around them. Her mother looked down at her with her wide brown eyes and smiled. "Follow only, Carthen." The words were an admonishment, one that Carth deserved. The game was to follow her mother until she could no longer track her, not tag along and hold on to her clothing. But something bothered Carth today, though she couldn't quite put a finger on what it might be. She released her grip and stood still as her mother continued down the street. People passed around her, but Carth ignored them, keeping her gaze fixed on her mother's dress and the raven hair hanging in waves beyond her shoulders, hair that was not unlike her own, and listened. The steady thudding with each step began to grow more distant, but didn't disappear even after the sight of her mother faded completely. Only then did she start forward again, keeping her focus on what she could hear of her mother. That was the trick of the game. Follow, but not so closely that her mother knew that she followed. If she could manage that, if she could trail her mother without her mother knowing she was there, Carth would win, at least that part of the game. The other part involved her father. Where was he? His part in the game was to follow Carth, but to do so unseen. This was a game they played often, one that her parents had started when she first managed to walk, and continued with each stop on their travels. Now 12, she played the game well, but still not as well as her parents. Focusing on the sound of her mother's footsteps, she continued after her, straining to hear them. The sound had grown faint, almost to the point where she couldn't be completely certain what she heard. But still, she detected the rhythm she recognized as her mother's, one that even the noise on the street around her couldn't overwhelm. Someone shoved her from behind and she spun, dancing back toward the wall behind her as her father had taught in another game. There were dozens of different games played, often at the same time. Over the years, her father had added new games, all while keeping her playing the older ones as well. Each game built on skills he taught her in the last, his way of passing time and helping her learn each city they stopped in, getting her comfortable, regardless of where they ended up. Nyaesh was no different, perhaps more dangerous. The attack she'd overheard her parents speak about outside the city made it seem different than what she had experienced in the last city. But the games continued. "Don't let me touch you." She could almost hear his voice as he instructed her. She wasn't nearly as good at that game as she was with the following game. Carth looked for her father but didn't see him. Only a man in a tattered black cloak who glared at her when she stared too long. He carried something under his arm, and as she watched, he stepped around a corner into an alley and disappeared. Her father would still be following her, but where was he? She backed against the wall, shifting her braided black hair over her shoulder, while watching the street for signs of movement that were out of place. Her parents had taught her that trick, instructing her to pay attention at all times and concentrate on what seemed unusual. In the streets of Nyaesh, a place with a river running along one shore and the trading road passing by the other border, peoples from all over traveled, making it more difficult to pick out what seemed out of place. There were certain patterns that she'd learned to pay attention to, and types of clothing that she knew to be concerned by. Her parents always wore clothing that blended in rather than standing out, making it that much more difficult to find them. Another man with a tattered cloak passed, and Carth watched him from the shadows. Was that the same man who'd bumped into her? No, the height was wrong, and this man had more sloped shoulders. He turned the same corner, though, and disappeared down the same alley. Two men with heavy tattoos along their arms, colorful marks that ran from their wrists all the way to their exposed shoulders, passed her. One of them flicked his gaze to her and she shrunk even deeper into the shadows. These weren't streets for someone her age.